Wanatu, a Uber competition is opening in South Africa. This is a service, obviously, you know what Uber is, that takes you from one area to the other. You're going to have to request on your cell phone, just like Uber or Bolt or any of those service providers, get from one spot to the other. Now, what's special about Wanatu? Wanatu is exclusively Afrikaans. Yes, Afrikaans is the language spoken to mostly white people in South Africa, also colored people in South Africa, and very little number of black people. But Afrikaans is perceived as a language of the white Afrikaner. Now, this Wanatu is going to be problematic. Why? Because many people feel like there's a level of segregation. Because Wanatu, in other words, in order for you to be hired as a driver, you're going to have to be speaking Afrikaans. And also, they're going to do thorough background check on your life. They need to check if you're a genuine human being, if you've done any crimes before, if you're somebody, you know what I mean. In other way, they want to give Afrikaners or Afrikaans-speaking people an opportunity. That's probably going to be secluding about over 85% of the people in South Africa. What's up, everybody? I hope you're doing good. It's a beautiful day. Thank you very much for stopping by. You very much appreciate it. We're going to do this very quickly. I think this is very interesting. So it's happening in South Africa. Here's South Africa on a map. Beautiful place, lovely people. So this app, Wanatu, is launched. Okay, it's operational. It launched in 2024 and was funded by private investors. Private investors that are predominantly Afrikaner. Afrikaners have sponsored an app, a company that's going to be a competition to Uber in South Africa, predominantly between Pretoria and Centurion. That's a very busy area amongst a lot of Afrikaner-speaking people. Now, this app has to hire people, okay, as drivers, and they need to do thorough checks. Number one, you need to speak Afrikaans. Number two, they need to double check you. Who are you? Where do you stay? What do you do? And many other things. They're going to check many criteria, and after that, they will decide whether you are qualified to be hired or not. Everything is done in Afrikaans. However, clients may be English-speaking people. You do not speak Afrikaans, you cannot be part of this app. By early December 2024, they reported about 10,000 registrations. And by now, January, it's 30,000 registrations. So a lot of people, that's 300 times growth. So the owners are saying they want to promote Afrikaans, they want to promote their language. It's important to them. Now, many people feel like there's a level of segregation to that. Do you think there's segregation to that? CEO Judith van der Walt stressed that the service is accessible to all users, according to the company's website. The focus on Afrikaans aims to restore dignity in our communities, jobs in Afrikaans. So it to restore dignity in the Afrikaner community or Afrikaans community. Very interesting. Now, many people feel like there's a level of unfairness and segregation, and I think we're going to try to dive into this. Yes, an attorney said they argue that excluding potential employees based on language may constitute an unfair discrimination unless the company can prove that the requirement is rational and justifiable, inherently linked to the job. So they feel like it's unfair, could be unfair, to cut out about 80% of the population of South Africa from, more than 80% from getting the job because they don't speak Afrikaans. And this is a big thing because the majority of black people of Africa or South Africa, you have 11 languages. You have Sotho, Zulu, Xhosa, Tsonga, Venda, Ndebele, and many others. Afrikaans is spoken by white Afrikaners and colored, predominantly. Some black, but not significant. Now, they say it's potentially discriminatory. However, are they going to be able to stop it? That's a big question mark. Because in 2006, cases of Joyce versus University of KwaZulu-Natal, another labor court upheld employees' decision not to appoint a senior lecturer who lacked sufficient English fluency, highlighting the importance of effective communication on the road. So in KwaZulu-Natal University, they refused to hire somebody because he lacked sufficient English fluency. I mean, you can't be a lecturer if you can't speak English in an English-speaking university. There is another case in 2021 where Labor Appeal Court found that requiring Chinese proficiency for managerial position was justified due to the company reliance on communication with Chinese stakeholders. This is another situation where they needed somebody who spoke Chinese because he would be speaking to Chinese stakeholders, and they cut somebody else because he couldn't speak Chinese or Mandarin. Okay, so can you really take these people to court because of Afrikaners? Clearly not, because court has justified in the past that people can be, offloaded from duty because they cannot speak either English or Chinese. Now, the Afrikaner app is going to continue. Now, fellas, I think this is a very interesting story. We need to dive into this. Let me give you context. The context is very simple. South Africa is a beautiful place, lovely people. However, many years ago, many Europeans left Europe in 1885. They went together in Berlin to discuss about how they're going to share Africa. They went to Berlin not because they wanted to take Africa, because they did not want to fight each other in Africa while looting and taking things from Africa. They came to Africa and they created what you call today countries like Benin, Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger, Uganda, Rwanda, South Africa, Zimbabwe, you name it. These countries never existed in 1884 and prior. They never existed. They only came to life after Berlin. They gave them the names. Okay, so yes, there used to be people. Yes, there used to be tribes and clans and people intermarrying and reaching to each other and crossing the other side. There was no border. It never existed. When white men came to Africa, because they wanted to loot gold, diamonds, uranium, you name it, they had to find a way to operate, or else they would be fighting each other. So the best way to avoid fighting each other is to create countries, saying, okay, you, Germany, you're going to take this country. You, France, you're going to take those countries. You, Britain, you're going to take these countries. And that's how these countries were formed. However, there is a major difference between white people in the rest of Africa and white people that came to South Africa. What is the difference? The majority of white people that came to Africa, they came to loot and go. They came to steal, take, rob, and go. Diamonds, gold, uranium, and go. That was the project. The Afrikaners came to South Africa to stay. The goal was, let's go find land, brand new land. Let's go start a life. Let's go conquer. They really felt the sense of belonging. They went to Africa, especially South Africa, and they stayed. They made children. They tried to build. They tried to do everything. However, in 1813, they created something very interesting. The 1913 Native Act was a South African law that severely restricted black people's ability to own land, essentially forcing them to live on designated reserve and effectively laying groundwork for apartheid by segregating land ownership based on race. In other words, it's prohibited black people from buying land. Okay, black people were only allowed to utilize 8% of the land. The rest of them belonged to the white people. And obviously, many people were working, they were doing what they had to do. They had to give up their lands to the white man, because how are you going to fight them? They had guns and machine guns and stuff like that. It was just very difficult. And it was very sad at that time for black South Africans. In 1948, they made it official. They created Apartheid, which was a system of racial segregation in South Africa. The goal was to separate black people and white people completely. So the black man's job was to work for the white man whilst he stayed very, very far away from the city, where you give them alcohol and all that stuff. They only come to work and return there. Now, Afrikaners made sure that South Africa was really, really built in the best way possible. Why? Because obviously they came to stay. They never thought that there would ever be a time where black people will take power back. That's why, today, as you can see, infrastructure in South Africa is spotless. Well, maybe not spotless, but it's beautiful compared to many African countries. The goal was, let's build, let's create, let's install, because we stay here. As opposed to many African countries, if you look, the most beautiful roads or most stable roads that were created back in time during colonialism are roads coming from a city of goods, let's say a city of mineral, let's say gold mine, diamond mine, going all the way to the sea. From the gold mine to the sea, from the diamond mine to the sea, from the timber spot to the sea. The goal was very simple. Let's steal and go. That's why you see much difference between South African infrastructure and many other African countries. In 1994, Nelson Mandela came out of prison and everybody was happy. The ANC was in power. The ANC was the political party that Nelson Mandela came from. That was predominantly black people. After the election, obviously, the blacks won because they were the majority of the country. Things changed, 30 years later, apartheid is over. But is it really over? Because we see many things happening. If you go into society in South Africa, you rarely see black people and white people getting married. Well, you may see here and there, but once every blue moon, really. Not very much. And even when you go to work, the majority of people you see together, you see blacks coming together, you see coloreds together in a certain area, you see white people together. Yes, there are Indians in South Africa as well. There are white, Indians, colored, and black. Now, how did the Indians come, you're asking yourself? Indians came into South Africa when British brought them to work. Why did the British bring them to work? They brought them to work because in many areas in South Africa, Zulus especially were asked to work. They refused to work. Therefore, it was very difficult for them. They decided to go get Indians to do the job. This is very similar to what they did in Kenya. In Kenya, they brought Indians as well to build the railroad coming from Mombasa all the way to Kampala, Uganda. Now, the big question is, why didn't they use Africans to build that road? Up until now, you still find a lot of Indians living in Kenya and Uganda. They have their own community. They're separated. If you go to South Africa, you go to Durban, you're going to find the most population of Indians you will find in one place beside India. So in this year, South Africa is free. Everybody's free. People go to the same schools, unlike before in the past where black people and white people could not go to the same restaurant. They couldn't go to the same school. They couldn't share transportation. Today, things have changed. People live together. But somewhere there's a little bit of a distance between the communities. People don't talk about it very much. It looks like people have accepted each other, but the reality is very different. I think people know it. Now, a few months back, we heard about a story about a creation of an Afrikaner university. The university is planned to be massive with billions of dollars of investment, where they're going to be farming, they're going to be doing engineering and many other things. A massive university sponsored by Afrikaners. And many people were very, very unhappy about that because they felt like there's a level of segregation. Are we creating separation again? Well, do they have the right to do it? That's a big question because, can you stop people from coming together and organize and create and build? You can't do that. So if you're not happy that they're doing that, what are you doing? Why don't you come together and build a university that's exclusively Zulu or exclusively Sotho or Tswana or Tsonga? Well, because nobody stops you from doing that. You can't really stop them from doing that because somewhere they have legitimacy to do what they want to do. Now, we have an app that's probably going to replace Uber or going to live next to Uber, obviously. Before you get hired, you need to speak Afrikaans. Afrikaans is not spoken by the majority of black people. They don't. And besides that, you need to go through thorough test. Is this racism? Question mark. Well, if you look at crime when it comes to attacking human beings with a knife, with a gun, people know who do that type of crime, and some people feel like they need to protect themselves. Obviously, they need to do thorough check. Doesn't matter where you come from. Why would you feel upset that they need to do background check before they hire you? Unless you're a criminal, unless you're a potential criminal. Now, can you not learn Afrikaans so you get a job? It's a possibility. Do people want to learn Afrikaans? Probably not. Are they going to get the job if they learn Afrikaans? Probably yes. Now, are they going to stop them from being hired because of other things and pretending it's other things are the reason why they're not being hired? Question mark. So I want to know from you, how do you feel about this? Do Afrikaners have the rights to create their own thing? Looking at the history of South Africa, are they then obliged to create something that has to involve everybody just to prove that they're not racist? Does this mean they are racist? Does creating something that's Afrikaans mean that they're racist? Question mark. Now, do you have to create every time when you're an Afrikaner person something that's inclusive for you to prove that you're not racist? Question mark. Let me know how you feel about this. Should the black people of South Africa then create their own thing then? Create your own university. Build your own app. Call it Mkombo or something. And say it's exclusive Zulu or something else. And see how people react. Is this an act of racism? Now, the big question is this one. South Africa is supposed to be a rainbow nation where everybody accepts each other. As you can see, the rainbow and all the colors, everybody, every tent is supposed to accept each other. Now, is this reality real, or it's just happening in the head of certain people? Let me know how you feel about this. It's always a great pleasure. God bless.